She stood there on the front porch, suitcase in one hand, sunglasses still perched in her hair like she hadn't just lit a match to our marriage. At first, Madison looked confused, like maybe the key was sticking or she was at the wrong door. She jiggled the handle, knocked once, then again, louder. When nothing happened, she stepped back and stared at the house like it had betrayed her. Then came the phone calls. 1, 2, 5, 10. I watched the screen light up over and over, her name flashing like some dying star that didn't know it had already collapsed. I didn't answer. I wouldn't. She left anyway. I was just finishing what she started. That was the moment it finally dawned on her. The way her hand trembled. The way her expression crumbled. That slow, dawning horror that no, I hadn't been bluffing. I had told her not to go. I told her what would happen if she did. And I meant every word. She realized, too late, that she was being locked out, not just of the house, but of my life. But let's find out how it all started, and most importantly, how it all ended. Trust me, it's going to be epic and unforgettable. I used to think being a good husband meant trusting your wife, no matter what. Not just surface-level trust, but the kind that keeps you calm even when things feel off. I grew up watching my parents argue over everything, especially loyalty. My old man didn't trust anyone, not even his own reflection, and I promised myself I'd never be that guy. I'd be better. I'd be the kind of man who gave his wife the benefit of the doubt, who didn't jump to conclusions, who didn't read too far into things that probably weren't there. And for a long time I was. Madison and I met in our early 20s. She was all energy and sharp smiles, always the loudest laugh in the room. She had this way of talking that made you feel like she'd known you forever, and maybe that's what got me. She was confident, beautiful, with a kind of boldness I lacked. I liked that about her. She made life feel a little more electric. I was the calm one, the planner, the guy who fixed things around the house before they even broke. She brought the spark, and I kept the lights steady. It worked, at least at first. She had this friend from college, Tyler. Tall guy, scruffy beard. One of those people who wore flannel in the summer and called himself laid back when he was just lazy. I met him a few months into our relationship when he showed up at one of her birthday parties. Madison introduced us like it was nothing. "This is Tyler. We go way back." And Tyler gave me that half-smirk handshake that says, "I've known her longer than you have." I didn't like him from the jump, but I told myself I was being childish. They'd talk often. At first, it was the occasional text or a quick call after work. Then it turned into long phone calls at night. "We're just catching up," she'd say, brushing it off. Sometimes, she'd laugh at something he said while I was across the room. She always assured me it was nothing. "You're my husband, not him. Don't be insecure." So I swallowed my discomfort, pushed it down, told myself trust was more important than jealousy. Madison was always big on boundaries, at least in theory. But when it came to Tyler, those boundaries started feeling more like suggestions. She'd go to brunch with him, go to his art showings, his open mics, his rooftop parties. "It's just a social thing," she'd say. "Besides, I'd invite you, but you hate that scene." And she wasn't wrong. I did hate it. Those were the kinds of places where everyone spoke in vague metaphors and drank beer from mason jars. I'd rather mow the lawn or fix the leak in the bathroom. But it still felt wrong, like I was being slowly edged out of something I was supposed to be part of. Once, I found a photo of the two of them on Instagram. It wasn't scandalous, not on the surface. Just Madison and Tyler, shoulder to shoulder, laughing under a string of backyard lights. But the way he looked at her, like he was sharing a private joke the rest of the world wasn't invited to, it stuck with me. When I asked her about it, she rolled her eyes. "God, it's just a picture. You're acting like a jealous teenager." So I let it go. Again, I didn't want to be controlling. I didn't want to be like my dad, always accusing, always suspicious. I didn't want to drive her away by questioning her. I wanted to be a good man, a good husband, the kind who lets his wife breathe. But the truth is, she was slowly writing me out of parts of her life. Little parts at first. A new friend group I'd never met. Texts I never saw. Conversations that died the moment I walked into the room. I'd ask, "Who were you talking to?" And she'd smile and say, "No one important." And somehow that made it worse. I don't think she ever thought I'd notice. Or maybe she thought I'd notice, but wouldn't care. That I was so used to being the good husband that I wouldn't push back. Looking back now, I realize that trust isn't just about keeping the peace. It's about believing someone values you enough not to make you question them in the first place. And somewhere along the way, Madison stopped caring about that. I stayed quiet for too long. I let too many things slide. I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt, even when my gut told me not to. I convinced myself that love meant being patient, even when it meant being blind. But that trust? It wasn't mutual. And eventually, that's what broke everything. It was a Friday night like any other. At least, that's what I thought when I walked through the door. The house smelled like vanilla candles and whatever leftover pasta Madison had reheated for dinner. She was sitting on the couch, cross-legged with her laptop on a throw pillow, tapping away at something and humming to herself like the world couldn't touch her. I hung up my jacket, set my keys in the bowl by the door, and gave her my usual tired smile. "Long day," I said. She barely looked up. "You always say that." That's when she dropped it. "Oh, by the way," she said, casual as anything, "I'm heading up to the cabin next weekend. Just me and some friends. Should be fun." I asked, "What cabin?" Because as far as I knew, we didn't have any plans, and she hadn't mentioned anything. "You remember Melanie's cousin? He's letting a bunch of us use his place near Lake Glenwood. Real rustic, no Wi-Fi, a little digital detox. Just Friday through Sunday. I already cleared it with work." I nodded slowly. "Who's going?" She started rattling off names. 2 girls I vaguely knew, some guy named Chad who I thought lived in Arizona now, and then she said it, "Tyler." My stomach tightened. "Tyler's going?" She didn't even pause. "Yeah, I think so. He mentioned it last week. I guess he's driving up with Becca." I stared at her for a long second. "Madison, you know how I feel about you going off for a weekend with him." Her eyes didn't flinch. "It's not just me and Tyler. It's a group. That doesn't change anything." She sighed, the kind of sigh that says she's already tired of the conversation before it starts. "Are we seriously doing this again?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam anything. I just said it plain, flat, serious. "If you go on that trip, don't bother coming back here." The silence that followed was thick, the kind you can hear ringing in your ears. She blinked, then laughed like I had just told the world's driest joke. "Come on," she said. "You're not serious." "I'm dead serious." She looked at me for a beat, lips parted slightly, like she was waiting for me to crack, to soften, to apologize and say I didn't mean it. But I didn't. Madison stood up, smoothing out her sweatshirt. "You're being ridiculous. It's not some romantic getaway. You know how much I need a break." "Then take one," I said. "Just not with him." She didn't say anything else. She just walked into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water like nothing had happened, like the ground hadn't just shifted between us. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wood grain in the surface for what felt like hours. My head was full, but my decision felt clear. I didn't know if she'd actually go. Part of me hoped she'd come to her senses, but I couldn't take the risk of hoping anymore. I pulled out my phone and texted my old friend, Russ. He and I grew up 2 streets apart and had been tight ever since. He'd served overseas, done a few years with State Patrol, and was now with a small department upstate. I didn't need much. "Hey," I wrote, "need a favor. Madison's heading up to Lake Glenwood next weekend. Supposed to be a group trip. Can you keep an eye out?" Quietly, Russ replied within the hour. "Yeah, I can do that. Just want photos or more." Photos, times, locations. I want facts. Just facts. Copy that. I knew I could count on him. Russ didn't deal in gray areas. He never had. That's why I picked him. Over the next few days, Madison acted like everything was fine. She packed her bag Thursday night, rolled her favorite flannel up tight, stuffed her shampoo into a zip bag like she was going on a spa retreat. Not once did she ask if I'd changed my mind about what I'd said. And not once did I take it back. Friday morning, she kissed me on the cheek, told me not to wait up, and walked out the door without a second glance. I didn't stop her. I didn't say a word. Just watched her go. I sat back down at that kitchen table, hands folded tight. There was no more doubt. No more denial. I had given her every chance. Now it was time to see the truth for what it was. I waited until I saw her car disappear around the corner, taillights blinking once as she turned onto the main road. Then I exhaled. It wasn't a dramatic breath, nothing movie-worthy. Just a long, tired exhale, the kind you give when you know something is over, and the only thing left to do is deal with it. I stood there for a second, still holding my coffee, staring at the space where her car had been. Then I went to the front door, turned the deadbolt, and got to work. First thing I did was change the locks. I'd already bought the new ones earlier that week, a simple set from the hardware store, nothing fancy. Just enough to make sure the old key didn't work anymore. I'd watched a video online about how to swap out the deadbolt, and by now I could have done it blindfolded. 10 minutes later, our front door was no longer her front door. After that, I went straight to the closet. I didn't pause. I didn't sift through things. I just started pulling her clothes off the hangers and laying them into cardboard boxes. I had bought 5 of them, thinking it would be enough. It wasn't. Madison had a talent for collecting things. Coats she never wore, scarves she never needed, shoes that still had the tags on them. But I boxed it all. I folded some, stuffed others. I didn't get sentimental. Every drawer I opened, every shelf I cleared, it felt like I was peeling off layers of a life that had already ended. I packed her makeup from the bathroom, the lotions that cluttered the sink, the curling iron that always knocked over my razor. I tossed it all in gently but quickly. I wanted it done. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Just done. I even boxed up that stupid cactus she insisted on keeping in the front window. Said it brought good energy into the home. Funny thing was, it never grew. Just sat there, small and prickly. A plant that looked stubborn just for the sake of it. I wrapped it in an old towel and set it next to her record player. Yes, she had a record player. Said it gave music soul. She only ever played one Fleetwood Mac album on it. Always the same side. I never told her I liked it. But I did. It all went into boxes. Then I walked into the office, sat down at the desk, and picked up the phone. I had my lawyer's number saved under T. Harris, legal, but in that moment, I just wanted to label it freedom. He picked up on the second ring. Tom Harris. It's me, I said. It's time. He didn't ask questions. We'd spoken before, just ideas, hypotheticals. He knew this wasn't a bluff. I'll get the papers ready. We'll serve her early next week. Good. I want it clean. No drama. Just done. You got it. I hung up. Then I sat in the chair, just for a second, letting the quiet settle around me. The house felt clearer. Not colder. Not emptier. Just clearer. Like someone had finally opened the windows after years of stale air. After a while, I got up and started moving the boxes into the garage. I labeled each one with her name and what was inside. Clothes. Bathroom. Books. Miscellaneous. It felt strange, seeing her whole life condensed into 10 boxes and a dusty cactus. But that's what it was now. Pieces of a life she chose to walk away from. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't sit down and flip through old pictures. I just kept moving. And it felt good. Once her things were boxed and stacked in the garage, I stood there staring at them for a long time. 10 boxes. A cactus. A record player. And a duffel bag with some of her shoes crammed in sideways. That was it. That was the physical weight of her in my life. After all the noise, the years, the arguments and compromises, it fit neatly in a stack I could load in one trip. But clearing the house was just the beginning. I wasn't going to let her keep a foot in the door, not emotionally, not financially. I knew how these things could drag on. One shared account here, a couple auto payments there, and before you know it, you're still tied to someone who isn't even on your team anymore. No, I was cutting the cord clean. First thing I did after locking up the garage was log into our online banking. I'd already done the math in my head. Half of what was in checking and half from the savings. Nothing underhanded, just what was mine. I transferred it all into a new account I had opened the day before under my name only. No joint access. No shared password. No questions. I closed the browser and opened up the app for the credit cards. Froze every one we held jointly. Mine, hers, emergency card, store card, gone. I made sure any bills set to auto pay from the joint account were switched to my new one or canceled. Took me over 2 hours, sitting there with bills and passwords and printouts. I didn't mind. It was methodical, like cleaning out a shed after a storm. After that, I called my old high school buddy Doug. He's a CPA now, runs a little office in town. We used to play basketball together. Now he files taxes and gives retirement advice. He picked up on the second ring. Doug Parker, CPA. Doug, it's me. I need to come in. How soon? Tomorrow, if you've got a chair. He made time. The next day, I walked into his office with a folder full of bank statements, account details, a copy of our marriage license, and a list of questions. Doug's the kind of guy who talks slow but thinks fast. We went over everything, assets, debts, retirement, even the little investment account we'd started 5 years ago and forgot about. Clean break, I told him. That's what I'm after. He nodded. That's smart. It's going to sting a bit now, but down the road? You'll be glad. He helped me map it all out. What was mine, what might be contested, what I needed to keep receipts for. When I walked out of there an hour later, I felt lighter. Not happy, just clearer. Like I finally had a map. That evening, I rented a small storage unit on the edge of town near her parents' place. It wasn't fancy, but it had a padlock and enough room to hold everything. I loaded her boxes into my truck, drove it over, and stacked them neatly inside. Left the cactus on top. Set the record player next to it. Closed the door and locked it. I slid the key into a padded envelope with a sticky note. All yours. No signature. No instructions. I mailed it to her parents' address with tracking and no return label. Let them be the middlemen now. Back home, I sat down at the kitchen table. Her name was still saved in my phone under Madison, with the same photo she took during our trip to the lake, laughing, sunglasses crooked, water in her hair. I stared at it for a moment, thought about that trip, how we were already starting to drift then, but pretending we weren't. Then I pressed and held, tapped, delete contact, and let it go. No ceremony. Just gone. That night, I laid down and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. No noise from the bathroom. No light from her phone. No tension hanging over the bed like smoke. I closed my eyes and let it all settle. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not joy. Not sadness. Just stillness. It was enough. Sunday evening, I was upstairs fixing the hinges on the hallway closet door. It had always stuck near the bottom, and I figured now was as good a time as any to finally get to it. I had my tools out, a cup of coffee on the floor beside me, and the game playing low on the bedroom TV. It was the first day in a long time where the quiet didn't feel heavy. It just felt calm. Then I heard it, the front door handle jiggling. At first it was subtle, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping baby. Then it got louder. A rattle. A push. A harder twist. I set my screwdriver down, wiped my hands on a rag, and walked over to the bedroom window that overlooked the front porch. There she was, Madison, standing in her travel clothes, leggings, a loose sweatshirt, that big tote bag she always traveled with slung over her shoulder. She was bent over the doorknob like she expected it to magically work on the third or fourth try. Her suitcase sat beside her, half unzipped, the little zipper tassel swinging in the breeze. I didn't move, just watched. She stood back and looked at the house like it had grown a second floor since she'd left. Her expression twisted into confusion, then annoyance. She looked through the front window, shaded her eyes with her hand, then walked over to the side door and tried that too. Same result. No click. No give. She pounded on the door. 3 knocks. Then 4 more. Then a pause, followed by a longer, more impatient series. I stayed upstairs. Her face was flushed now, mouth moving. She was saying something, but the glass kept her words out. Then came the calls. My phone buzzed. Once. Then again. Then again. I didn't answer. She called again. I let it ring. The vibration echoed across the nightstand like a little engine refusing to die. After the 5th or 6th call, she stopped knocking. I could see her pacing in front of the porch now, phone to her ear, muttering into it like she couldn't believe I wasn't picking up. She tried texting next. I didn't read them right away, but I saw the preview bubbles. Hey, I think something's wrong with the locks. Are you home? Seriously, this isn't funny. She tried the door one more time, then stood there, still as a statue, staring at the lock like it had betrayed her. That's when it happened, that tiny shift in her posture, that look in her eyes. She wasn't confused anymore. She understood. I watched her slowly lower her hand from the door. She took a step back, like someone waking up from a dream. She looked around at the porch, the driveway, the windows, and finally, at the spot where my truck was parked around the corner, out of view. I saw it settle in her. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. My phone buzzed again. I let it ring halfway, then picked it up and answered. I didn't say anything right away. Just held the phone to my ear and waited. Hello? Are you there? Her voice was sharp now, clipped with that familiar edge, the one she used when she couldn't control a situation. I told you what would happen, I said. That's all. Just that. Then I ended the call. No shouting. No drama. No drawn-out explanations. I had nothing more to offer. I watched her stare at her phone like it had spat in her face. She tapped at the screen a few more times, paced in a slow circle, and finally slumped down on the edge of the porch. She sat there for maybe 10 minutes, looking out at the street like she was waiting for someone to step out and tell her this was a prank. I didn't move. Didn't turn on a light. Didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing whether I was even home or not. Eventually, she stood up, dragged her suitcase back down the steps, turned toward the sidewalk, and disappeared around the corner, the same way she'd left 2 days before. The door didn't open for her then, and it wouldn't again. The next morning, the sun was barely up when my phone buzzed. I was still in bed, lying on my back, hands folded across my chest. I hadn't been asleep. I'd spent most of the night thinking, not pacing or tossing, just thinking. It wasn't regret. It wasn't anger. Just that heavy stillness that comes when you know a chapter's finally closed, and you're staring at the blank page of what's next. I reached over to silence the buzzing and saw what it was, a voicemail. From Madison. Not a missed call. Just a straight-to-voicemail drop. No ringing. That told me she hadn't wanted to talk to me directly, she just wanted to say her piece without hearing the sound of my voice. I let it sit for a while. Stared at the little notification dot on the screen. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I sat up, opened the app, and pressed play. At first, there was nothing. Just the sound of her breathing, shaky, like she'd been crying or had just finished. Then her voice, small and cracked, came through. Hey. I don't even know how to start this. She paused. I heard her sniff. I messed up, she said. I know you're angry. I would be too. But please, just listen. There was another pause, longer this time. I could hear traffic in the background. Maybe she was outside, maybe at a gas station or waiting on a ride. She always hated calling people from public places. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said. I didn't go there thinking that anything would happen with Tyler. I really didn't. She started talking faster, like the words were outrunning her thoughts. The first night, we were drinking. Everyone was. And Tyler kept handing me drinks. He was being funny, you know how he is, and I guess I wasn't thinking. And then later, when most people had gone to bed, he stayed up with me. And I don't even remember the whole conversation, but at some point, I was on the couch, and he was just there. She was crying now. I could hear it through the words. Her voice hitched like she was trying to keep it together and failing. He recorded it, she whispered. I didn't know until the next morning. He showed me a video on his phone and said if I told anyone, he'd send it to you. Or post it. I didn't even know he'd done it. I swear. I feel sick. I feel disgusting. She took a long breath. Then another. I know you told me not to go. I know what you said. And I didn't listen. I thought I could handle it, that nothing would happen, that Tyler was just Tyler, and I'd be home, and we'd be fine. But now everything's a mess. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. There was a deep silence, and then, in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, I need you. That part almost made me laugh, in a bitter kind of way. She continued, please, just call me back. Or text me. Or something. I know I messed everything up, but I'm scared. I don't have anyone else. Please. The message ended there. I sat with the phone in my hand, not moving, staring out the window. It was quiet outside. Just the soft chirp of birds and the slow rustle of wind through the trees. It was a good morning. Peaceful. And yet her voice still rang in my ears. Not because I missed her. Not because I felt sorry for her. But because I realized, in that moment, that everything she was saying was just noise. Her words might have been shaky and full of guilt, but the decision that led to them was clear and deliberate. She hadn't tripped into that cabin. She hadn't fallen into that moment. She walked toward it. She had options. She had choices. At any point, she could have stopped. Could have said no. Could have remembered the man she left behind, the warnings he gave, the line she promised not to cross. But she didn't. And now she wanted me to help her feel clean again. To pick her up from the wreck she caused and somehow carry her through it. But I couldn't do that. I wouldn't. Somewhere inside me, I think I knew this was coming for a long time. That voice in the back of my head I kept ignoring, the quiet tension between us, the way she lit up when Tyler's name came up. It had all been leading here. That voicemail wasn't a confession. It was just confirmation. I put the phone down on the nightstand. Didn't replay the message. Didn't respond. I just stood up, stretched, and walked downstairs to make coffee. It was Monday, and I had a day to start. By Tuesday morning, I'd heard enough. After that voicemail, I didn't respond. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't even open the rest of the messages she sent through the night. They came in steady, like a slow drip from a leaking faucet, each one trying to find a crack in the wall I'd already sealed shut. I didn't even read the last few. I didn't need to. Her regret wasn't going to undo what had already been done. That morning, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, sat down at the dining room table with my laptop, and opened the folder I'd saved weeks ago. Final steps. Inside was everything: my lawyer's draft of the divorce paperwork, a compiled PDF of the evidence Russ had collected, and the chain of emails with the courier service I'd planned to use, just in case things ever got to this point. I clicked through the documents one last time, double-checking that every field was filled, every timestamp in place. Russ had been thorough. Photos from the cabin, time logs, a screenshot of Madison sitting too close to Tyler by the fire pit, one of them slipping out to the edge of the woods together. He even had a short video clip from a gas station security cam showing them early the next morning, her eyes low, his hand on her back. Nothing graphic, nothing explicit, but enough to erase any room for, "It's not what it looks like." It was exactly what it looked like. I bundled it all into one neat packet and sent it to the courier service for printing and delivery. The envelope would include two things: the official divorce filing and the evidence. I didn't add a letter. I didn't need to explain anything. Her signature was just a formality. I paid extra for same-day service, made sure they'd hand it to her directly. I listed her parents' address as the destination. It felt right. They had opened their door for her when she came back from that trip. Might as well be the ones to witness the fallout, too. Once it was sent, I sat there a while longer, just sipping my coffee, watching the steam rise. I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't waiting for some emotional wave to crash over me. Honestly, all I felt was steady. Not numb, just still. But that stillness didn't last long. By noon, the call started, not from Madison this time, but from our mutual friends. People we'd shared dinners with, gone on double dates with. Folks who never really took sides because they never thought there'd be sides to take. "Hey man, maybe you should just hear her out. Look, I know she messed up, but this seems kind of harsh. You guys had something real. Isn't it worth saving?" I didn't answer a single one. Not because I was being cold. Because they didn't know what they were talking about. They hadn't seen what I'd seen. They hadn't sat with the silence in our house or watched the slow erosion of trust one glance at a phone screen at a time. They weren't the ones who were lied to. They weren't the ones she walked away from. So I blocked them, one by one. No message. No argument. People like to play referee when they're not the ones bleeding on the field. That evening, I turned off my phone entirely, left it on the nightstand, and went out back to sit under the porch light. The air had that early spring chill to it, just sharp enough to keep you awake. I wrapped myself in the old army blanket my grandfather gave me and watched the sky turn from blue to dark. Somewhere around 8, a delivery notification buzzed on my tablet inside the house. The papers had been delivered. That was that. A part of me wondered what her face looked like when she opened the envelope. If her hands shook. If her parents were there. If she flipped straight to the evidence or stared blankly at the top line of the paperwork for 5 minutes before realizing it was real. But then again, maybe she knew it was coming all along. She just didn't believe I had the backbone to follow through. Things started unraveling faster than I expected. It was barely a week after the papers were served when I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Madison had been let go from her job. She worked in marketing at a company that loved to boast about being family-focused and community-first. They were the kind that had team-building retreats and hosted charity runs on the weekends. Big on image. Big on values. Apparently, the HR department received in anonymous envelope copies of the same photos Russ had collected, plus a short note that simply read, "This is who represents you." I didn't send it. I didn't need to. Word has a way of moving on its own when the damage is loud enough. They called her in. She denied everything. Tried to explain it away. But it didn't matter. The damage was already done. And image is everything when you work in a building with frosted glass walls and motivational quotes stenciled on every hallway. No severance. No second chances. They cut her loose. I imagine she went home that day still hoping someone, anyone, would say she'd been wronged. That maybe the world would feel sorry for her. But that wasn't the case. Her friend group, the one she used to take selfies with at wine tastings and rooftop bars, went quiet. A few unfollowed her almost immediately. Others just stopped replying to her texts. Even the ones who used to defend her, who once called me rigid or too serious, fell off like leaves in November. And Tyler? He vanished. Ghosted her completely. No explanation. No apology. One day they were tangled up in their bad decisions. The next day he was gone. Changed his number. Deleted his socials. Rumor was he skipped town, maybe back to Oregon where his sister lived. She tried reaching out to him, of course. left him messages, just like she had for me. But there was no one on the other end this time. That's what happens when your co-conspirator never planned on sticking around. Her parents took her in. I heard they weren't thrilled about it, especially after the envelope arrived at their house too. The one with the storage key and her belongings. Her dad called once. Not to yell, just to say, "We got the box." That's all. Then he hung up. I could hear the disappointment in his voice. And I didn't envy them one bit. Raising someone only to watch them tear through other people's lives like it meant nothing, that has to weigh on a person. From what I was told, the house was quiet. Conversations were short. Madison mostly kept to her room. Her mom stopped posting pictures. Her dad stopped coming into the shop where he'd grab coffee every Saturday. I didn't take any satisfaction in it, but I also didn't feel bad. Meanwhile, I was steady. I met with Doug again, wrapped up the last of the financial filings. My lawyer made sure the divorce was ironclad. I got the house, the savings, and the truck. Most importantly, I kept Max, our old golden retriever. Madison used to call him our baby back when things were good, back when she still cared about things that mattered. But in the end, she didn't even ask about him. Never once mentioned him after she left. That told me everything I needed to know. I took some time off work, spent a week replanting the flower beds out front, fixed the shed door, finally finished staining the deck. Things I'd put off because I didn't have the time or the headspace before. But now, each task felt like a brick I was laying to build something new. Something mine. I even started walking Max through the old park trail again. The one we used to visit back when we first moved into this house. Funny thing is, I hadn't stepped foot there in over a year. It felt too heavy before. Now, it felt like home again. People ask if I'm angry. If I hate her. I don't. There's no fire left for that. The way I see it, hating her would mean I still give her power. And I don't. Not anymore. I just know this. Some choices carry consequences. Some betrayals don't wash out with time. There are lines you can't cross and come back from. I don't miss Madison. Not the version of her that made those choices. Not the version of her that walked out of our front door thinking nothing would change. She gambled everything on a lie, thinking I'd always be there on the other side of it. But some mistakes come with receipts. And she got every single one of hers right on time. Share your thoughts in the comments. Should people be held accountable for their actions at work if they fail in their personal lives? If you like the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.